when you first get saved, like you kind of like try to cut everything off,
Okay.
but initially it's like, when I think back to it and when I think now, it's like, I could have still been in the strip clubs and the clubs because the people that are there are the ones who really actually need to hear this the most.
So we back, we live, we lit for another episode of the A1 Live podcast, and we gonna take them to church on this one, y'all. I got a goodie. Uh, uh, she's a gospel artist first, but a woman of the word. Of course, first she's an individual, but gospel artist, woman of the word, woman of the faith. I got Mira Mira on the podcast with us.
What's up? What's up?
Nothing. What's going on? First of all, before we, get into the formalities, how's your week? How's your month? How's your year going?
Things are going good. Getting back into writing. Getting
Okay.
back to writing. Hopefully, get make a trip out to Atlanta pretty soon with my team and get into the studio. So that's kind of where I'm at. But right now, I'm just writing, getting the creative juices going, and
Yeah.
trying to stay focused and everything.
Is Atlanta a place? Is that where you go to do most of your recording, or you got an in house there, or
So I record out here in California,
okay,
but that's where like my team is at. I started with a new team, CSM. It's a music group, so that's where they're at. So we plan to go out to the studio and try to work in like a photo shoot and try to do as much as we can in like the little bit of time that I'll be out there. So that's why I'm heading out to Atlanta. That's where the team's at.
and you say you in LA. How's the gospel music scene out there? Like, how is it? How's the gospel music scene out there? Is it pretty prevalent, or
Well, I'm kind of like more Riverside area, so like an hour from LA. I haven't actually got the opportunity to like go out in LA and check it out, but I know they do have like a really, really big like Christian hip hop festival that they're doing this summer. So I'm hoping to become part of that. But there's a lot of radio stations in LA
Mhm.
that are Christian hip hop, gospel. So that's the hope is to get out to Atlanta, make the single, and start pushing everything out towards this way. So. Um, but yeah, most of my, Christian music has been when I I lived in Florida. So it was a really big music scene there, especially like in Jacksonville, Florida. But there's a lot of resources out here. So like I said, once we go to Atlanta, we do the single, we're gonna push everything out here.
Okay, and will you be shooting a video in Atlanta as well, or will you just record out there and then come back and get the visuals together?
So I think that we're gonna go out there. We're gonna go to the studio. I'm gonna basically just like kind of go from scratch. Just me and a producer just sitting and vibing and creating a single. And then we're gonna do a photo shoot and I think try to work on the marketing stuff out there. And
Yeah.
I'll probably have to come back and if we decide to shoot a music video, I'll probably have to make another trip. But this first trip is probably gonna be just like a couple days, to meet everybody and to get things going. So.
Well, what I like to do before we get into the music and talk about the music, I always like to get familiar with the artist's background a little bit. Gives your supporters an idea of who you are inside, well, outside of the music. So where are you originally from?
So I'm originally from outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
That's
Okay, word. Yeah, PA. Okay, shout out Black and Yellow. All that good stuff.
for sure.
Okay. How long were you in Pittsburgh before you branched out and got your feet wet in other areas?
Yeah, so I was raised out there, and then I joined the military right after high school. So I immediately left. My mom moved to California, to Southern California, like my senior year of high school. So after I graduated, I left Pennsylvania and came to California for a couple weeks, and then like went off to boot camp, and I was first stationed in California. From there, I went to like Guam and Florida. I was in Florida for a long time, and now we've been in California for about 5 years now. So we're my husband's still in the military. So
Okay.
we're still military. I think right now, like, California is kind of probably gonna be home, like where we stay.
Hmm.
We have a house here and everything. So that's kind of where how I've, been everywhere. But Pittsburgh, I'll go home 2, 3 times a year, got to see the family and, the
Yeah.
thing. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no matter how much we branch out, we still gotta, touch the soil and just,
Yeah.
get a go back and just reset, sometimes, you know what I mean? So that's
Yeah.
always lovely. How much has PA, how much has that influenced, your artistry? Like even just growing up, just how much has that the area you grew up, how much has that influenced your artistry?
A lot.
If at all, you know?
Say a lot because the way that I rap, I'm like a storyteller and I like metaphors and I like for words to come together and be like clever and it makes sense and just to tell a story and that comes from, just being from the East Coast and the hip hop out there.
Mhm.
And then also just like being real and being raw and just, saying what's on your mind that, that's just where I'm from. Like, we kind of just speak what we feel and put it out there and really unapologetic about what comes out. So that definitely has to do with being raised and coming from the East Coast.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you recall any early any of your earliest musical memories just, growing up and just can you recall any memories that stuck to you?
Yeah, so I mean, initially when with music, I wasn't really like a hip hop person like I sang and I grew up in church. So like gospel music really was what, I grew up on. I grew up on listening to like, Mary Mary and the Clark sisters and, Kirk Franklin and things like that. I wasn't really into hip hop or Christian hip hop at that time. I
Okay.
remember I was really young, like my older cousins used to argue about who was better, like which album was better, the Nas or the Jay-Z, you know what I mean? So when Nas and Jay-Z had their beef, they felt like
Yeah.
they take sides and my cousins would be, beefing and stuff like that. So that's where I was like really like kind of introduced into hip hop and they were like listening to, they would play song for song and then I started like listening to them and I was like, man, these guys are both good. Like, they're
Yeah, yeah.
initially like I said with Christian hip hop, I heard about a little in church, but it wasn't really what it is now. It really, I guess, I mean, to
Absolutely, because growing up, like I don't know your age, and we don't have to get into that, but even for me growing up, I grew up in a church as well. Whole family just religious, and we had that spirituality background, and like you say, it was more, the choirs were prevalent, and of course the solo artists, and the Kirk Franklins and the Fred Hammonds, all of that was, was strong in the household. Like you just said, we didn't have any gospel rappers that we could look at and say, okay, well, I can do something different with this.
right, right, yeah, it wasn't. They weren't as cool as the Jay-Z's and the Nas's and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Or even like a Lecrae, we didn't have those.
yeah, yeah. No, we didn't really have those guys that were like outside the box and they were rapping, but although they were speaking about God and Christianity, it was still sounded dope. Like we didn't really have that. So my mission was, continue to just, I started, doing poetry and writing, and I was writing for when I first joined the military. I was in 29 Palms and I was like in a rap group. I was like the singer. So then
Okay.
myself like writing for the guys and I would, be like, hey, what do you guys think about this little, 16? And like, oh, that's kind of fire. Like you wrote
What was
that?
the name of the group? Do you remember?
Oh man. Remember it. I don't remember the name of the group. It was a bunch of guys from everywhere. We had two guys from Florida. We had a guy from LA. We had a guy from Virginia. The military. So it was just like all
Yeah.
such a different blend of sounds. We had
It
a guy.
was a melting pot of
Yeah,
artists.
yeah, so it was just so dope. And it was just kind of like, how like Young Money, when they came out and you had all these different guys on there rapping on one track. Like that's how it was. And I would just
Yep.
like hooks and stuff. And then I started getting into like really writing, and then, you know, based on like how I grew up and what I listened to, you know, I started really writing. And I was raised in the church, but like I didn't really get saved. I wasn't really saved at that time. But
Okay.
when I decided to get saved and like, you know, give my life to the Lord, obviously I got changed from the inside out. So when I started writing and I was doing music, it was obviously all focused on, you know, on God. Um, and you know, just clean music and, you know, things like that, and trying to, how do I enrich the kingdom, how do I, you know, express, you know, this feeling that I feel inside, like this love that I have for the Lord, and just different things like that. So that's where I like really transition into being like a Christian hip-hop artist,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because you know, when you make that transition, you make that change, it changes you from the inside out. So almost everything that you do is affected by your lifestyle. So when
Absolutely.
I'm writing and everything,
Absolutely.
that's just naturally and organically, you know, just became like a Christian hip hop artist. Because I was in Jacksonville, Florida, and I wasn't a Christian hip hop artist. Like not to like right before I left. Like I was, you know, in clubs and strip clubs and, you know, performing as a secular artist. You know, everybody
Mm-hmm.
was a secular artist. And then when I got saved, it was like boom, overnight. Okay, I can't do this anymore. I can't, you know, be writing like this. And then, you know, I started getting.
When you made that transition,
Mhm.
did you find, like, because you know sometimes when we have these gifts, right, and we're not necessarily using our gifts for the reason that we were put here to do, right?
Mhm.
Did you find like you getting more, uh not even, let's say, success, but just getting more out of when you started to use your gift for what you felt like you needed to use it for, or was it about the same? Like, you know what I mean? Like, did you get more out of it when you started to, okay, let me focus on writing music about God, and let me focus on, using my spirit to relate to the audience, as opposed to, I know I'm supposed to be doing this, but I'm over here, I'm going, I know I should be going right, but I'm going left.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely got more out of it. I mean, everything just changed. I mean, it went from like the places I perform, you know, to, you know, being able to, you know, now have my kids watch me perform, you know, because like it's at a place that they could, you know, they could see it and they could hear it and, you know, they could vibe to it and listen to it. So, you know, I know I take my kids to the studio and, you know, they see me perform and they love it. You know, they love hip hop now. They love, you know, they love what they're like what their mom is doing. So, you know, that for first, like, you know, obviously I can't take my kids to no clubs or, you know, that I wouldn't even have them listening to the type of music that I was
Yeah.
doing before. Um, and then also just like, you know, not having to live like two different lives. Like, you know, if I'm living this life, if I'm going to church, if I'm talking to people on the street about, you know, God and how to live a better life, then, you know, obviously I had to do that in my music and I had to make sure that, you know, what I'm saying to them like mirrors how my actual life is.
Hmm.
So you know, I've always been inauthentic in my music. I've never been, you know, you hear some music and you know, like you know, that dude is not a gangster. That dude's not a drug dealer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like I've
We
always
do
been.
we doing what we need to do for the bag, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah, it's always like that. It's like, you know, I've always been who God created me to be. And even
Hmm.
before I was saved, like I've always lived that life. So when I got saved, it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore because this is just not who I am anymore. This is not
Hmm.
how I speak. This is not how I live. This is not how I act. So, you know, it was an easy transition for me. I think that what was hard was now it's like, okay, where do I go from here? Because I had built up a pretty good success and my name was pretty known. Um, in, you know, in Jacksonville, Florida, where I was at. So I was like, okay, now where do I go from here doing this type of music? You know, where like what do I need to do? And you know, when you first get saved, like you kind of like try to cut everything off, you know.
Okay.
But initially it's like, you know, when I think back to it and when I think now, it's like, you know, I could have still been in the strip clubs and the clubs because the people that are there are the ones who really actually need to hear this the most. So
Sometimes you gotta go to where, you gotta go to where they
yeah,
need it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah, for sure. You
Yeah.
got to go to the people because not everybody's going to the churches. You know, not
Because
every.
that don't mean that I'm hitting the strip clubs and then I'm, because if you're really about that life, right, then
Mhm.
you're not gonna be tempted. You know what I mean? You're not gonna have to go and do as they do. You're just there to spread a message and then you out. Like a perfect example I like to give is my aunt, like my aunt Carla. even she's deep into the faith, and when we have certain events or certain family events, she comes and she show love and she pull up, but then she know once it's time to go, all right, y'all getting crazy, she out of there. You know what I mean?
Right. And that
Yeah.
comes with maturity. When you first, like when I first got saved, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. Like, this is not the first time I got baptized. This is not the first time I got saved. But like when I was like, okay, I'm going to be saved. I'm grown. I'm not gonna play around. Like, I had to make sure that me personally eliminated everything that may bring me back to where I was. When
Yeah,
you're mature in your faith, like where I'm at right now, I can go to those clubs. I can go to parties. I still get invited to things where people are drinking and smoking and carrying on. I just don't become part of that. You see artists like Lecrae's and the Kirk Franklins. They don't just stick to, Christian and gospel. They're in the secular realms,
absolutely.
and they're just who they are in those places, and that just, like I said, comes with the maturity and, having a closer walk and a longer walk and things like that.
Which is so dope because as a person that might be secular, as a person that might be, teetering,
Mhm.
they can look at a person like that and say, okay, he's human too. You know what I mean? It's not about being hypocritical. It's not about, okay, this person makes mistakes too, or this person is human too. So if
Right.
if he can do this, I can get somewhere at that point where he is. So it's all about influence too. Yeah. So that's dope that you were able to, get to a point where, okay, I can come back and I can touch some souls and bring them back home, where they need to be. That's so dope. What was there ever a time where you thought about doing something different, completely different besides and not just even with the faith musically or even both? Was there ever a time where you just was like, okay, let me do something different. Let me try something, that's not music related, or let me get into get into malpractice, or let me, whatever it may be.
Well, I mean, I am a nurse, so that's what I
Hmm.
do when I'm not, that's what I do. But like, there's been plenty of times, even just recently, where, I'm like, okay, I always have the enemy telling me that I shouldn't be doing this, that I
Hmm.
should be, oh, you waited too long, or just whatever, you always have that, dealt, and that definitely comes from the enemy, especially when they know that God has given you a great gift and that you can be influential and you can change lives. And so that those things come up all the time, but for me, I just need to stay focused. I just need to stay focused on my word, and I just need to, like, I finally, like, developing a team and like
Hmm.
people that know what they're doing, because I've always done this by myself, but if you're really serious about this, you can't really do it by yourself. So when I reached out and I was like, I'm gonna step out on faith and got the team, then they're like, you doing this, but this is what we need to do, and this is good, and you're pushing this, but you need to put this out. Or it's like, yeah, this producer's really good, but sometimes just having a known producer make your stuff makes the difference in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, just stuff like that. So now that I have a team behind me, like, I feel really good, and all my energy is just gonna basically go into this project and putting this new music out and everything. So I'm just so excited to get to
you
Atlanta.
you in a beautiful space.
Yeah.
And let me just, let me tell you, you said something about, is it too late? But there's no age limit, I don't think, and I'm not a expert, but there's no age limit, especially in what you do on one, saving souls, and
Mhm.
then being an influence. Now the type of influence you are, depends, but there's no age limit on helping somebody. You know what I mean? So it's good that you're not, subjected to the enemy and just, giving up on what you here and you're meant to do.
So
You know what I
we
mean?
serve a God that doesn't see time like we see time. You know,
Yeah.
we serve a God who just, he doesn't see it like we see it. So it's like, one of my people that I look up to, and she's not like in the music, but like, Tabitha Brown, she's
Hmm.
big, she's kind of just got her start. You know what I mean? Like, she's been, an actress and doing this stuff and having these dreams and,
For years.
years, and God gonna happen. So, she just never really let up. And that's kind of what I want to be for other people. Like, I just want them to know that, it may not come in that time frame, a lot of people think their life is over if they don't get what they're supposed to get at 25. But
Absolutely.
for you at 35, 45. So as long as God has it for you, there's nobody that can tell you that, it's not for you.
Mm.
So, that's kind of like, what I wake up to every day and what I go by and things like that. So that keeps me moving.
Absolutely. Are you still over there at Greater Emmanuel?
Yeah, I am. I go with them. That's my virtual church. I'm a member. I love that church.
I seen that certificate. You got the you went through the new member classes, and talk about the process of that,
Oh yeah.
and what becoming an official member means to you over there, because I know when we get that home, that church home, that's big. Talk about the process of that and what that means to you.
Yeah, and so for me, like when we were in station in Pensacola a couple years ago, we had like such a great church. So when we came from Pensacola to California, it was like really, it was almost depressing because it was like, I got to give up this church, you know what I mean? And so being out for here in California, even though I've been out here for like 5 years, we went to churches and things like that. But it was just like my husband and I were not really ready to like commit to a church because we had such a strong one back home. We were still watching online and tithing and things like that.
Yeah.
So, I've always been like a super, Clark Sister fan and things like that. But I, started listening to Bishop J. Drew Shear. I knew who he was, but I really started listening to him probably about the beginning of 2020, when COVID was really hitting and things like that, and everything was shut down. And I was just so impressed with his heart for people. I was so impressed with his heart for ministry and young people and women and just like, he's just like a leader's leader. And so I was like watching him, like everything that he did, like if he was speaking, if he was, at someone else's church or just whatever he was doing. And then I was like watching him on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays. And I was like learning from him. And he was just like preaching the word and teaching in such a way that I was like, you can like feel the Holy Spirit on people, even like on
Yeah.
the, and it was just like, it just kind of felt like home, even though I was thousands of miles away, he's in Detroit. So it's like, man, I just started watching, and then, they just made the online family feel like we were just family, you know what I mean? They're
Hmm.
calling, they're checking in, we've got like, groups and chats and, they call us, like First Lady actually left me a message like yesterday. So it's like, you got people sewing into you and you're so far away. But it was just like, it just felt like home. And so, yeah, I started, I was like, you know what? I'm going to commit to this church because, even though they may not know it, they like committed so much for me, just, being on there every day. And, I would join the prayer calls. His wife has a prayer call on Wednesday and he has a prayer call on Thursdays. And I was just like locked in and everything. So,
Yeah.
they were just giving me everything that I needed,
Yeah. Feeding your soul.
yeah, just feeding into me, just not, you're not even knowing it. And so I was like, and I started like really tithing. Like I was like, you know what? I'm gonna start tithing to this church. I've been tithing there for like a year, and I could see, my finances growing and things just, getting better for me financially, even in a pandemic. Like my husband and I just bought two brand new cars, like, in a pandemic. Like we
Hmm.
good, and I attribute to the fact that I've been faithful in my tithing, and I know that I'm tithing in good ground with that church. So,
Okay.
then I was like,
Talk about that for a second, because a lot, even a lot of us, and I'm even speaking for myself, that don't know how important it is. You just mentioned tithing into good ground. You know what I mean? Talk about that, and talk about how important that is.
yeah, so that's crucial. It's just basically, and I teach my son that, and
Because
he's
we can send 10% to Joe Schmo up the street, who just he
yeah,
might not even be. So how important is that? You know what I
it's
mean?
so important. So what I was watching Bishop J. Drew Shear doing during this time is, I mean, first of all, one of the things that he did is he just had this almost like a telethon where he was raising money for other churches because he's like, I'm good, my church is good in this time, but there's other churches out here that are closing doors in this
Okay.
pandemic. So I saw that he was doing that and he was trying to help out other churches. Then I saw this thing that he was doing called Stretch, where he was trying to help leaders, church leaders, to basically shift what they were doing, because a lot of these churches weren't making it because they weren't able to shift into that online. This is a new normal. So he was putting these expert panels together to try to teach these people, okay, this is how you should run your website. This is how you should do this. This is how you should do that. And he would have experts on there. And so I could see that he was doing more for his church. He wasn't like, oh, we're good during this pandemic. I'm just going to chill out. No, he was trying to make sure that everybody was good. So that's just an indicator that that's good ground, is that God is not only blessing him, but he's being a blessing for other people. So you're right. You don't want to just go ahead and, give like, okay, like essentially when you're giving money, you are giving it to God. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
God. But, not everybody, some people do misappropriate funds, and that's just
Mm-hmm.
what it is.
Yeah.
That's why people don't believe in tithing. So for me, I automatically, and I teach my son this too, because my son is an actor and he gets checks, all the time for projects that he does. And, I teach him, okay, we're going to take our best, our first 10%, our best, and we're going to give it to God because of what he's done for us. And
Absolutely.
I've seen it, like, I'm a living witness of, I wasn't supposed to get this check. This money came from nowhere in pandemic. I've had like 3 or 4 checks in the pandemic that there's no reason I should have got like unexpected money. But I do know that I do believe that it was because I did so and I was faithful. I said, God, I might not have what I need right now, but I have 10% and I'm going to give it to you and I'm going to be faithful with my tithes. And even my
Mm-hmm.
son gets his checks. Like he got a check the other day. He's like, oh, he's like, we did the math. He's like, oh, that's all. He's like, how about can I give God this instead? Which was like, $60 more than what he needed. And
Yeah.
he's like, I want to, I just want to round it up to like 100 or whatever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, he's even like, I'm teaching him, like, it's not growing up. I was like, oh man, I gotta pay my tithes. Now it's
Yeah.
like, I see that it's like a part of my worship. It's like,
Yeah.
I thank
Yeah.
God in
It's
advance.
not it's not just about the tithe. Sometimes it's about the offering too. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So just as you're saying, just to piggyback, yep, yep.
Yeah, sometimes the offering too. It's like,
Just
just extra. Like he's done so
yeah.
much. I can give my tithes, but the offerings the extra. Like, okay, that tithes like almost like, if you're a Christian, some people see it as obligatory, but that offering is just that extra. Like I don't have to do this, but I'm gonna, continue to, to do it. So and that's another thing with GEI, Greater Emmanuel, is like they teach you the importance of tithing. And before that, I didn't really, even though I grew up in the church, I didn't really grow up. My great grandmother taught us about tithing, but like in my household, I didn't see like my mom, taking 10% out, and this is, I didn't see that. So it's like now it's like I see it from the church, and they break down the importance of it and the importance of sowing into good ground. And then so now I can take that and I teach my family tithing and things like that. But I've been very blessed in this pandemic, and I do believe it's because I have been faithful in my tithing.
Absolutely. And speaking of, the crazy times that we're in and the rough world that we're living in right now, I'm curious how you think, being a musician gives you the most joy in life today. Like does it still, you know what I mean? Does it still give you that joy of, pressing through even in the times that we're living in right now?
Yeah, it does. And good music reflects the times. So it's like, there's so much stuff that's going on that it just fuels me musically. Like I
Hmm.
just think about things all the time, and I just write it down, and it just motivates me, just to kind of put things onto paper and just to reflect how blessed I am, because you're a black man. Just waking up in the morning and not getting shot by a police officer is a blessing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, taking those kind of things into consideration, and even just being upset about what we see in our communities, putting that onto paper, or to, expressing that's therapy. You know what I mean? That really
Hmm.
is. So, yeah, the times just fuel me just to write more and to just focus more on, my craft and everything.
Yeah. Yeah. And able to and sometimes that's therapeutic within itself, just being able to go to that pen and pad and reflect on what's going on and use your voice to be able to translate that into music and translate that in a song so that someone that's hearing it and say, yeah, yeah, I can go through it too, or I can go through to come out. So
I've always been very transparent about music, specifically about struggles with like my parents' addictions that they've had.
Hmm.
Really with my with my dad. My dad died in his addiction. Him being in jail, my mom being a single mother. The things that I write about are universal. And I've had young kids come up to me all the time and say, my dad's in jail too. And a lot of them don't, their friends might not know that. Or,
Hmm.
so it's like when you write about real things, you give people opportunity to be like, I'm not by myself. I'm not alone.
Yeah,
Other
yeah,
people feel this. You know what I mean? Like, these feelings are real. Oh, she gets mad too. She gets hurt too. She asks God why too. She gets upset with God too. Like, so when you're transparent and honest in your music like that and you kind of put that forward, you kind of really free other people too. And so that's
absolutely.
always written the way that I've written. God, I pray before I start, and He helps me get the words and put things together. But I know that when I'm doing it, I'm helping someone, and I'm freeing somebody up, and that's why I just write the way that I do. I story tell. I talk about what's real. I talk about what's current, and I just know that somebody's out there like that needs it, that needs to hear it, that needs to be free.
uh I see a lot of times where artists may even in the even in secular music, we all have a moral compass, right?
Yeah,
So we all have things that we would and wouldn't do. And even in secular music, you see a lot of people, uh, selling out. And when I say selling out, it don't always have to do with, the conspiracies of the Illuminati. Sometimes it might be, okay, I said I would never wear a red shirt, but not now because I see the bag, I'll wear a red shirt. Would you ever compromise your beliefs or, sell out for the seat at the table, so to speak? You know what I mean?
because I had an opportunity to do that when I was not even saved. I had a manager who knew a lot of people in Jacksonville, and we were at some hotel, and there was a big concert there, and there was a lot of big name people, and he was like kind of encouraging me to be a little bit more like, oh, you don't have to have sex with them, but maybe flirt with them and kind of just go in the room. No, I'm not doing that. Like there's no check big enough. What you can
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
You'll never
yeah.
be able to give me what God has for me. Like
Absolutely.
what you think that is going to be a big opportunity, God has something bigger over the door. I just have to stay, on my moral ground. And that was even before I was saved. Like that was just in secular music. So I
Yeah.
had a moral compass because I've always been raised a certain way. You know,
Hmm.
in the back of my head, I hear my mom and my grandmother. Like, it's like I don't never want to let them down. So, you know, that's always been my head. I'm not going to compromise my soul. It just may not be for me. You know,
Yeah,
a lot of people have to understand, like, it just might not be for you at that time. But just remember that, like, God's answers are always yes and amen. So if that's not the one right there, then that means that something better is coming. So just don't ever compromise yourself for anything, for something quick, or you think it's going to come easier. No.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-mm.
Because for what? And then you setting yourself back or setting yourself up to miss out on your blessings or miss out on what's for you. You know what I mean? What could have been right there, and you were right at the tipping point. As soon as as soon as you mess up, then it's like, what did I do it for? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
What did I do it for? And then was it worth it? Because what is given could be taken, right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
No man can give you what God can.
Yeah,
It could be promised
yeah,
everything, but God can give you things that aren't even in your wildest dreams. Like I have dreams, but God can give me stuff that I ain't even dreamed about. So I mean, I'm not gonna mess that up just for something quick and easy. Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Do you believe? And we've had this. We've seen glimpses of this with different artists. Coming in and out of gospel music. Secular artists coming over and doing songs and teaming up. Do you think there could be room for Christian or spiritual artists and secular artists to coexist?
Oh yeah, I think they can coexist for definite. I feel that we should, we're not too different. The difference.
Or do you, because and I'm asking you because I sometimes want the opinion, because does And I'm only asking because I don't, does that confuse? Let's say we get like a Neo that might, do the music he does, which is, it's not too far left, but he does the music he does. Then he might team up, with an artist like Mary Mary, so to speak, and then we get that, and then he goes back. Is that confusing, or is that just, should we see that for what it is?
So I guess there's two sides to that because you do have some Christians that believe that you shouldn't mix that spirits do mix and things like that. But I also believe that I don't ever want to make anybody feel that because I'm a Christian artist or because I live a certain way that we can't work together and we can't because who knows, like when they're in the studio, that maybe Neo's life is being changed, or maybe he's thinking about hey, maybe I need to stop doing this, or just whatever, because there's people that are a big influence.
Even like let's say, and not to cut you off, even like let's say a Snoop, he came out with a whole gospel album. You follow what I'm saying? So, and you have those that will condemn him and say, how dare you? And then, your next album gonna be dropping like it's hot, like you know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I was always taught it doesn't matter who the word is. It only matters about the word, like it doesn't matter who's necessarily giving it.
The thing is, if you look in the Bible at the people that God chose, He didn't really choose any perfect people. The only perfect people that was a vessel was Jesus,
Right.
and he hung out with people that weren't, that the church was like, oh, you're breaking bread with this person, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But the thing is, what's important is He remained Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you're going to be in those groups, in those spaces, you have to remain yourself. You have to
Mm-hmm.
continue to be that influence.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that the Bible calls us to. It says that we are in the world, but we're not of the world, right?
Absolutely.
Not to be conformed by the world, but to be conformed by the word and the renewing of our mind. So we should be able to, be listening to the word and letting the word conform us, so that when we do go into the world, that we conform the world as the word is. So it's like, if you're working with these other artists, then it shouldn't be a problem if you're doing what you're supposed to do, if you're being that influence in who God made you to be. Now, if you're going out with these artists and then you're drinking with them and smoking with them, that's something completely different. But I love when I see Christian artists and secular artists, because here's the thing: most of these secular artists grew up in the church. Now,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
brother, he knows the word. He's a big Clark's fan. If I have that album, he's got some great artists on there. Those are the artists that he grew up with. And although
Absolutely.
he's living his life, just like look at DMX. DMX was in the world, and we know that DMX was struggling, but DMX would get up there and pray.
Mm-hmm.
Did not wait for God to make him perfect before he started telling people who God was. So
Every at the end of every album, he put a prayer on it.
everyone, so when he died, I was like, God, my prayer was like, God, he knew you.
Mm-hmm.
You were. He was he had you, he accepted you as his Lord and Savior. He just had struggles, and we have such a good, merciful God that I do believe that he is in the kingdom of heaven right now with no struggles, with no pain,
Mm-hmm.
because he knew who God was. But it doesn't mean that we're perfect. We're not going to be going to heaven as perfect people. If we were, we wouldn't have needed Jesus in the first beginning.
Absolutely.
So I feel like
Absolutely.
it's a good thing. I personally would love to collaborate with all types of artists, and hopefully, could be a mentor and to change, those artists that I work with. But I'm all for, putting together. I do see a lot of times too, because people are raised in the church, that when their secular career is over, that a lot of times they do come over to gospel.
Yeah.
Say, it's not a sexual based thing. You don't have to be a certain age and like, I'll get out. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's open for everybody that loves the Lord and wants to, to sing about him. So
And if you got a good eye, you know what I'm saying? If you have a good eye, and the ones that are just doing it because, okay, I done milked it all over here. Let me go back home, because those are the ones that be in and out and so flip flop. And I'm not gonna name any names because I can't, I don't know what's going on with a person's spirit, but
Right.
the ones that seem genuine and the ones that okay, they're here for a moment and then they'll probably backslide, if you will.
If they if
So
if they received a big check or if they received a
yeah,
deal, they would
yeah,
be right where they were. Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Oh, for
Absolutely. And you talked about influences. What are some of your favorite artists or musicians that continue to inspire you in music?
So obviously, like, been a Clark sister fan forever. That's like a generational thing. Like, they've been in the game for a very long time, and they continue to remain relevant. I'm
Hmm.
also a big Kiara Shear fan. Like, I love her
Okay.
music. I love her transparency. I just got her book. Um, so I just love that whole family dynamic. Jay Drew, the producer, I would love to work with him someday. Always Kirk Franklin. Kirk Franklin was probably the first, like, him and Mary Mary were like, my mom wasn't forcing me to listen to Christian music when the Clark sisters was always in my house. So we wake up Saturday, we're listening to them and Motown and all sorts of stuff, cleaning, you know how it goes. But like when I was like, oh, I want to hear some Christian music, I would turn it on myself. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Those have been my influences. I'm a big Lecrae fan. Um, I love Andy Mineo. I kind of like that whole 116 team. There's other artists out there, but to be honest with you, like, I like my music. Like,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
like
yeah,
I get inspired by the stuff that I write. Like, I get
yeah,
high off my own supply, so it's like,
yeah,
and I've got so much unreleased stuff. I've got so many notes that, like, I'm just like, man, I come back like, oh, I really said that. I need to put that into like a song. You know,
yeah,
I'm kind of influenced by everything. I love every type of genre of music.
yeah.
I mean, there's just something for me. As long as a person is saying something or they can sing, like,
There
I'm,
we go.
you know, but for sure, I mean, I would love, like, to collaborate. I think if, my number one collaboration would probably have to be Kiera Shear. Like, we would have to definitely do something together. Yeah.
You mentioned Kirk Franklin. What do you feel about the backlash and the ridicule he recently received? For
Yeah.
doing something that which I felt like in our type of community, if I know I grew up around the type of parents that if I was giving them disrespect, I'm gonna get checked for it. I'm not, like,
Oh yeah.
but
No,
this is our community. But we got some people that think because he's a person of the cloth, and that's where I say again, we see these people, they're human. So what do you think about, what do you feel about the backlash that he's received? And do you feel like he did anything wrong, or he's just being a parent?
situation kind of broke my heart because I am a fan of his, and because
Okay.
Flash, um, that whole thing kind of broke my heart. And let me just turn this off because this sound is going off, and I don't want to. Okay, so the whole, like I said, the whole situation kind of broke my heart because I am such a big fan of his and the way everything rolled out and panned out, and because he is seen as the Christian. You know what I mean? Like, he's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
a poster board for, like, everything, as far as Christianity. And I don't think that that's changed. I just hate that the situation even have to happen, but I do know that, he struggled with his son, for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
And that's a real thing, and that's something that families, need to see, that they're not by themselves. Like, you sometimes just, no matter how good your family is, like, you might just still have one person that's just always going to be continually tripping, or who's just not going to be in line with everybody else. Uh,
Hmm.
I've heard interviews from his mother, and she said the same thing. She supports Kirk. They've been, wrestling with him for a long time. We don't know what happened before that. I just know that, everybody has a certain point. Everybody knows what to say to somebody to get them to that point. Like,
Yeah.
we all
And,
know.
and a lot of times, even with us on the outside looking in, maybe not you, maybe not me, but when I say us, I'm speaking for the masses, right? We love to for some reason we love to, as soon as a person does something that we feel might be that, or that we feel he shouldn't do, or why did he say it, or why did he speak in that manner, we love to say, look at, you know what I mean, like why do
Yeah.
we love to do that, you know what I mean? Like,
The things that that I hate is like as soon as you mess up, oh, I thought you were a Christian. Or you
yeah, yeah, yeah,
like, if you really know what Christianity is, it's not being perfect. It's just that we know who to go to, the perfect person, when we do
yeah,
mess up. It's
yeah,
like, a lot of people, mess up and they continue to mess up. But we know that when we mess up, that we need to go to Jesus. We need to, we need to ask for forgiveness. We need to repent. And that's the thing with Kirk is he repented. Like, so even in his repentance, he didn't say it was okay. He
yeah,
messed up. So he knew that what he felt, what he did was wrong. Even though we were like, oh, it's all yeah, but he as a Christian felt that going off like that was not the right thing to do.
hmm,
And he asked for forgiveness from God and he asked for forgiveness from us. And I personally am one of those type of Christians where I do know the Christians cuss, but I do also feel like as a Christian, we should be, try to live a different and better
yeah,
life. And I think Kirk has always done that. He's
hmm,
always, people, I've seen him in interviews and people ask him, oh, I want to get into Christian music. What should I do? He said, you should live the life of as a Christian person, you know?
absolutely,
And so, but I don't think that him, going off on his son for being disrespectful, his grown son, and cursing at him makes him any less of a Christian.
absolutely, absolutely. It just makes him a passionate parent. And like I say, in our community, we know what that looked like, so we shouldn't be surprised. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
been years. Mine is what, 32? This has been or almost 33. This
Yeah.
is years of issues because if you see him in the public, you never see his son around. And
Hmm.
when you hear of his son, it's always him down talking his dad, or he's doing something that, I think he was like in a movie or some like show where it was like, the character who's portraying was something way different from what, Kirk Franklin and how he was raised was. So he's always been kind of in a position where he wasn't really honoring his.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us to honor your mother and father.
Absolutely.
You don't, even if you have issues with your parents, you still have to honor them. Has there
Hmm.
been times that I've wanted to cuss my parents out growing up? Did it in my head, but never came out of my mouth. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Raised a certain way that you don't do that to your even as a grown woman. I don't talk to my mother like she is one of my little friends because
Right.
we have a friendship relationship now that I'm grown. I respect her, and I think that's the thing. And even
That's
especially
very important.
especially black man, we don't. There's enough that they have to deal with in this world that they shouldn't be disrespected by their own family, by their own child. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? We need to get to a place where we're honoring our black men and we're supporting them and we're talking to them, not crazy. You know what I mean? And so black men do want respect. So if you come at them certain ways, you're gonna get that. You're gonna
And
get
like you say, if it's been a history of it, it's
it's just fed up. He's just at a point where everybody just reached their breaking point that should have never been reported. It,
yeah,
it should have been family business. You know what I mean? Not saying
yeah,
that this is the first time. Hopefully, it's the last time, but it could have just been dealt with better. My heart just breaks that the situation even had to happen. That
yeah,
that he even had to be put on the spot like that. This is even a conversation. Yeah.
yeah. Uh, Back to the music. What's the most gratifying thing about about what you do? Whether what's the whether it's your artistry, whether it's your face, what's the most gratifying thing that you get out of it?
I guess it's a bunch of things. It's that knowing that I'm being obedient, knowing that I'm not just putting music out, that I'm praying about it, um, and knowing that God is really using me and using my struggles, my testimonies. I'm not the type of Christian to act like I'm perfect. Like I always talk about the things that I've done because I know that there's power in your testimony. So I'm
Yeah,
stuff in my music. So the fact that I know that I'm being transparent, that I'm helping somebody out, because I've always been the type of person when I went to church, I was moved more by the people that got up and testified, other than I was moved less by the people in the back of the church that treated you like you were a sinner, or that they were better than you because they were an usher or just whatever it was. That didn't move me. That made me not want to go to church. The people
okay,
stood up and talked about how God changed them. that's what gravitated me to being in the house of God. A lot of people are like, oh, you don't have to go to church, to be a Christian, but you do need that accountability. You do need that fellowship. You do
Mhm.
need that support. So it's like that's what always kind of pushed me and fueled me to go to church and to be a better person. So that's why it's just natural for me to put that in my type of music. So
Okay.
people that I've come from here. This is where I'm at. You can do it too. So that's gratifying to me. And then also when people just like it, when they're vibing out, when
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
line like, oh, I don't hear
Somebody call it, oh girl, that last one was mine.
hear too many females rapping like that type of stuff is like that is gratifying because I'm just like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's good to do it for the kingdom and stuff, but it's also good when people that are down here like it as well.
And,
So yeah.
and getting something out of it, and it's dope when you got a song, or even if even if it's just not necessarily like deep faith based, but something that somebody can vibe off of it, and they bopping, and they it's still gratifying, of course.
That's kind of how it is. I mean, it's not super like deep, but
Yeah.
you hear God in it. You know what I mean? You don't need a stethoscope to hear God when I'm
Yeah.
about my music. And so yeah, yeah.
What I want to ask you, what advice would you give someone that's maybe battling, they got one foot in, one foot out, the world. And I know you mentioned not being perfect, but you did get to that point where, what would advice would you give to someone that's battling, okay, I know where I should be, but this is keep pulling me back?
Mhm. Just practice being consistent. Pray a lot and stay in your word because the more that you read the word of God, you know, the more that you learn who he is, because that's the Bible tells us that is the word before it. Before time was the word, and the word was God, right? So if you're reading your word, you're learning who it is. If you're talking and you're spending time with God, you're learning who he is. The more that you talk and spend time with him, he's going to speak back to you and he's going to help you with the things that you struggle with. But be consistent. You know, at the end of the day, you're going to have to make a choice. You
Hmm.
have to make a choice because you don't we like I said, I'm a nurse. I'm an ER nurse, and I see every day how quickly life is snatched from people. People don't make appointments for the emergency room. They come in on an emergent basis. And especially during COVID, I've watched people die alone because you people can't come into the hospital. So I've been responsible for praying over souls and asking God to let them in, and I don't even know what their life is about. But
Wow.
refuse to allow someone to die by themselves. So my thing is when I do that, I think, did this person take an opportunity to really know who Jesus was and to live a good life? And the Bible is a blueprint for us. It tells us that we don't have to be perfect. The people that God used the most, even Jesus' disciples, they weren't perfect, but they
Mhm.
had a love for God, and they loved Jesus and they believed him, and they were working towards getting better every day. And so just working every day of doing better. Waking up every day. Okay, I'm gonna pray a little bit more. I'm gonna read my Bible a little bit more. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go to church. I'm gonna watch a church service.
Mhm.
Just doing little steps right there to will get you there, but you just have to make a choice of like, hey, this is what I need to do. But just know that regardless of how you live your life, Jesus loves you. God
Yeah,
loves you.
absolutely.
You're perfect to him. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of times we feel like that, we allow the enemy to believe that, oh, let me just keep what I'm doing because God don't really care about me and things like that. But that's just, a trick of the enemy. Just continue to stay consistent, stay prayed up, read your word, and you'll start making the choices that you need to make.
Absolutely. And another question I want to ask you, you touched on it earlier as far as knowing how to build the faith, but still, enjoying yourself. Well, what do you say to the people that have the misconception that just because I'm of the faith and just because I'm in the word, means life stops, means I can't still have fun. I'm not going skating, or I'm not camping, or I'm not, what do you say to those people that had that misconception that spirituality means I'm just walking around just all day just
Yeah.
head low and
It's a good, I mean, I can understand the misconception because I grew up Christian, and so there was things that we weren't a lot, we didn't celebrate Halloween. We
okay.
didn't do certain things, and that's not, a lot of that is just practice. That's not Bible. That's not in the word. You know what I mean? Like, some of those things that, the rules and that structure, it's man-made. I have a lot of fun as a Christian. Like, there's not too much stuff that I don't do that I wasn't, I just keep it fun and keep it safe, and if basically,
Yeah.
like, keep it kid friendly, but I have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's like, but you even, you it's a lot of happiness, but it's joy because you're fulfilled. Like, because if all this other fun stuff goes away, I still have Christ inside me. So that's
Yeah.
where joy comes from. It's not just happiness you have to have something happy for, but if you have that joy, that's what's just different. Like, it's like, I feel this way on good days and bad days.
Absolutely.
It's just having fun. Like I said, when I first became, like, really, like, okay, I'm saved, I'm doing this, like, I took everything out. Like, I wasn't listening to secular music, I wasn't watching certain movies because I was trying to stay focused. But the more that you, like, learn the word of God, and the more that you stay, on your path, you're just like, I don't have to cut this person and this person out. I just have to remain consistent and be who I am. And
Hmm.
I would recommend for some people that aren't able to go to certain places and stay in line, then stay home. If you can't, if you feel like you
If
want to,
you're not ready to deal with the temptation, yeah,
and that's
of
anybody,
course.
that's somebody coming off of alcohol or somebody coming off of
Yeah.
drugs.
Yeah.
You can't, may just not be able to. Like, my dad struggled. He knew that he couldn't go back home to where he was from and stay sober, so he would
Yeah.
stay away from home. You know what I mean? So you just have to know what you have to do to continue to stay on that up and up. So, as long as once you start getting more mature, and once you take a while, like, you see alcoholics now, like, they become, mentors, and they can go to bars and pick up the people that are in there that are drunk, that they are responsible for, and not have a drink. So it's like, the longer that you do it and you stay on the path, then you're going to be okay. But, it might just take a little longer for others. That's all.
Absolutely. And you talked about this earlier in the podcast, as far as, us coming up and the type of gospel music there was compared to now. What do you think of the evolution of gospel music from where we were growing up, and how do you think it has changed, if at all?
Sometimes I listen to gospel music and I'm like, I could put this on my, like, after dark playlist, because I don't know if this sound like R&B. You know what I mean? Like, different, and which is good, because it's like, it has a cool sound, it's different,
Absolutely.
and it's, that gives some younger, producers and artists a chance to feel like, I can still do the Christian music and still be cool and still be fun and vibe out. You see pastors up there in skinny jeans, and you see people,
Yeah.
it's very, like, the culture of it, how everything looks does mirror, the culture, outside. So it's like, you see gospel artists that do kind of look like R&B artists. You might not know the difference if you're not listening to what they're saying, but I think
Yeah.
that helps to draw people in. If I look at you and it looks familiar, then that might help to draw you in. And then, you just got people, that's just their style. They love gospel music, but they also love to dress, and to be cool, and they love fashion. And I think that's all good, because it doesn't, like, separate us too much. Sometimes I'll go to a church, and I know it's gonna be a different church when all the women are in skirts. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you go, like, oh, like, we're gonna go bowling tonight. Okay, I'll go. And then they're in jean skirts, and you're like,
Yeah.
dang, like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
is some people can relate to that, some people can't. So the fact that everybody does look like the same, we're just talking about Jesus. We just have a different.
Absolutely.
I think it's a beautiful thing.
Uh, what's that one song? And I'm talking about your music. What's that one song that you hear, like you touched on earlier? Like, sometimes you like to just get into your own music and rock out. What's that one song that you hear, or that you may even perform? that just take you to that place? What's the one song that when you hear it or when you perform it, it take you there?
Um, I have a song called "Suffering."
Mm-hmm.
That song does it for me. That song does it for a lot of people because it just creates the atmosphere of, it talks about a lot of pain, but then it starts to talk about the breakthrough of the pain as well. It's
Mm-hmm.
very therapeutic for me. It's very healing for other people. And when I perform it, I usually, have the lights real low, and you don't have any. It's one of those songs where you have to listen to the words. But the beat it's such a strong beat, but it's so airy to like it's like you're gonna listen to. There's so much space in it
Yeah.
that and that's those are the type of beats that I like the
I
most.
love those type. I love them. Yeah, yeah,
Like it's just as dope as the song, but like it's not gonna overshadow what I'm saying because
yeah.
that happens a lot. Like the beat is so dope, and you lose what the person's saying, and
Mm-hmm.
I always get the lyric sheet, and I'm like, is this what they're saying? Like this sounds beat covers it. So it's like it's one of those songs where the beat is good, it's so airy, so much space, and I'm just talking about some real stuff on it. But when I perform it, it's like, it's kind of like chilling. It's different every single time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely one of my favorite songs and definitely one of my favorite songs to perform. But my best songs are the ones that I haven't recorded yet.
Absolutely, and we can't wait to hear him. So go ahead and hit Atlanta and come back and get them mixed and mastered so we can rock out with Mira Mira. What do you hope your fans or even your supporters take away from your music?
Just really who Christ is, his changing, how he can change anybody, um, how he can use anybody like myself, um, how good he is, um, and just like the world can be tough. I talk about a lot of pain, a lot of issues in the world. The world can be tough, but I know where my help comes from,
Mm-hmm.
and so just giving people that hope and that belief that no matter how bad it gets, we have a God that doesn't just sit high and look low. He's present. We can feel him through the Holy Spirit. We can reach him through the Word. We can tap in. We just have to give him a try. So I think that's really what like I want people to feel from me.
I was doing my research a little bit. Merch. You got some merch on sale or you?
Yeah, so I have a website called therealmirror.com. And that's where I have merch on there. That's where you can basically get all the updates of like, my music and everything. I'm pretty active on social media. Um at The Real Mirror is probably, where I'm at, where you can find me, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Um, yeah.
And one more thing before we go. I know you say you were you got a single that you're working on. Can we expect the album soon, or what's next for Mirror?
So I think the plan is to release two singles. To release one that's kind of like a eye opener, trying to catch
Yeah,
you, just to try to build a bigger fan base, and then the second one is going to be like the single. You know what I mean?
yeah,
So,
the catch and hook, the one that's going. This,
yeah, hopefully on the Billboard one. So
yeah,
that's the thing, trying to get that going, trying to get that out, and then just promo, get it out there, getting on these let's do as much shows. I really appreciate you bringing on me on, doing as much media and things like that, and just kind of really working as hard as I can to get the name, get the music out there. um I think that's where we're at.
well, that's so dope, Mira. And once again, I appreciate you for letting me sit down and pick your brain and ask you these questions. One more time, give them your social media and where they can listen to your music and follow you on.
Sure. At The Real Mira, it's TheRealMira. That's my Instagram, that's my Twitter, that's my Facebook. And then TheRealMirror.com is the website. So you can, if you go on the website, you can find me everywhere. You can my music, pictures, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I visited the website myself. It's super dope, and so if you listening and you want good merch and you want to good music to listen to, and you might even have some questions. I'm pretty sure they can hit your website and tap into you if they have any questions.
Yep, there's a contact section on there. They can ask any type of questions. I'm always here to get back at people, especially fans. Pray for you, speak with you. I'm an open book. I've always been like that big sis type. So
Have you tapped in, or maybe you do? Have you thought about doing mentorship or?
So that's definitely next for me. I've always been a mentor in just different aspects of my life in the military, in music, and I love it. Like I said, I've always been that big sis. I'm, one of the oldest of many kids, so I've always kind of had that mindset of kind of taking care of people and making sure everybody was straight. So,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely a mentorship is something that I want to do, just to kind of just to sow into the younger generation or even older generation. It doesn't matter. You'd
Yeah.
be surprised who needs a mentor. That's one thing that I've really found in my walk is that mentorship is really important. I've always been like the oldest and the one that my mom and dad never had to worry about. And
Mhm.
so, but everybody needs a mentor. Everybody needs somebody, even people that are,
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if it's just a person, even if it's just an extra set of ears to,
yeah,
so absolutely. So yeah, y'all make sure y'all go follow this woman. She a woman of the faith, so of course she gonna guide you and she gonna give you some good inspiration to be followed by. And once again, I gotta thank you for joining the A1 Live podcast, and we gonna chop it up again.
thank you. Yeah, definitely. I hit you up when things are coming, and I just pray that God blesses, your podcast. And I know you said it's the infancy fits phases and stages.
Yeah, yeah.
God's gonna blow it up and grow it up, and just be faithful and consistent. And I'm excited to see where you go.